Hello. Hey, everybody. Welcome to The Rational Live for Friday, September 18th, 2020. I am your host, David Dole. A lot to get to today, including many stories I just did not have time to prep. Starting next year, it's very possible I will have a second person to help me behind the scenes so that I could do or present even more content to you. But for now, it's only me, so it's quite tough. But let me give you a little breakdown of what to expect today. As you can see from the title, Joe Rogan apologized. And so that'll be just a quick update to the story I put out today. Joe Biden had a drive-in town hall. I'll discuss that later on in the show. A Canadian university cancels a prominent academic over their pro-human rights stance. I'll get to that shortly. An MSNBC host cries over Biden reaching out to the working class. That's a great story. A former Pence aide reveals Trump's hatred for his supporters. So I'll get to that. And as I said, some other stories here that I didn't really get to prep, but I may quickly try to go through some of them. It's just this, especially these past 2 days, there's been a lot coming out that it's just kind of hard to keep track. But as always, if you're so inclined, rationalnational.com/join. That's the Patreon page. Direct links are below the video in the description box. There's also a PayPal link, Streamlabs, various ways to help support the show. Of course, super chats I'll take throughout the show. That also really helps to support this content and keep it coming. As someone in the chat just said, Kim, I just saw it, says, hey guys, hit that like button now. Yes, hit that like button. Hit that like button. Like, share, all the good stuff. Make sure you hit the bell notification icon if you're not already subscribed. Make sure you sub, and you will be notified when videos go up. All right. I think that's... I always forget to say something at the beginning here. Oh, yeah. I also have a show on Twitch. This week, I gotta admit, I just have not been consistent. This week, I have been really inundated with a lot of... There's been so much news that I've just been kind of not able to find the energy in the morning to do that Twitch show. But I did do it, I think, once or twice. I will try to be more consistent next week. Tomorrow, I may actually be able to carve out an hour or so to play a game on Twitch and talk with you people. That isn't what the usual show is. The usual show is kind of like a morning show, chatting with the audience, looking at news. But on the weekends, I'm not. On the weekends, I am removing myself from reality and playing a game to escape the madness that we are in. And the more, before I get to any stories here, the more and more I read and listen about, or listen to people discussing what could happen in November with the election, the more I'm freaking out. Trump is going to try everything he can, and not even just Trump, really people behind Trump, Bill Barr. They're going to try everything they can to steal the election. And it's likely going to be predicated on mail-in ballots. More Democratic voters vote by mail than Republicans do. This is still up. Let me take this down. Meaning that on election day, I think I've discussed this before, but I'll just discuss it here shortly or quickly. On election day, Trump is going to try and claim victory because it's very possible that it may look like on election day that he won because the mail-in ballots haven't been counted yet. And then really it won't be obvious till days later that actually Biden won. But by then they may try to stop the count, stop the vote, destroy the votes by mail, and appoint Trump the winner. Your only course of action here is if you are somebody who is in a district that is not doing too bad by election day when it comes to the virus, or really early vote if you can. Early vote in person if you can. So if you think it's safe, if you're not going to get the virus, if you're in a place that isn't too bad, and there is early voting, I would go and vote early, in person. And the mail-in ballots, I just don't... There's no guarantee that your mail-in ballot's going to be counted. Still vote, obviously, if that's your only option, of course. But if you can, really, go in person and vote. Because it's going to be a lot better if the count favors Biden on election day than if we have to wait a few days for it to possibly show that. So anyways, That's just my fears coming out right now. Let's hope I'm wrong, but they're going to try everything. Anyways, let me get to the first story quickly here. And I think I said this, but I'll take chats and stuff throughout as well. All right. Joe Rogan, podcast host, has apologized for spreading a right-wing lie about forest fires in Oregon. Now, I covered the bulk of this story in a video showing you the clip where Rogan brings up this idea, this right-wing conspiracy, that left-wing activists were lighting fires in Oregon that led to the forest fires. There's no truth at all to that. No truth. And it got to the point where even the FBI and law enforcement had to come out and say it's not true. And in fact, an officer in Oregon had to be put on leave because he went on a rant about it. And when you even have law enforcement putting officers on or an officer on leave over lying about this, you know it's a lie. So there was no truth at all to it. I'm not sure where Rogan read it. He doesn't say that here, but he did send out an apology today. My hair is really crazy today. He did send out an apology today saying, I fucked up in the podcast with Douglas Murray and said that people got arrested lighting fires in Portland. That turns out to not be true. I was very irresponsible not looking into it before I repeated it. I read one story about a guy getting arrested for lighting fires. Turned out to be true, but the other shit I read about people getting arrested for lighting fires in Portland was not true. I repeated it without looking into it, and it was a really fucking stupid mistake. That won't happen again. I'm sorry. A very Joe Rogan apology with the profanities here. But this is great. This is great. All you can do is give him credit here. And anybody getting like, I saw some most of the responses to this have been positive, but I saw some responses, people going after it. What do you want me to do? Like, the lie is already out there. All you can do at this point is either acknowledge it and apologize or pretend it didn't happen. I'd rather him come out, acknowledge it, apologize, than pretend it didn't happen. And I think you should also, I think it's very likely we're going to get an apology on a new episode of his show as well. Because he's definitely addressed past controversies on his podcast before, so I think he'll do that again. So hopefully he comes out, apologizes for this, and you know, accepts responsibility. It's just this is why it's important that we call out these lies when they happen. So there is this I don't know, this idea that if we go after him, anyways, I don't want to get into weird speculation, but there are people who have been on a show before who are not going to mention that bullshit, and that's fine. In that video, actually, I defended those people who will not call out Joe Rogan, and it's because they likely have a chance to be invited on again and be able to educate that audience. And they also have maybe his phone number, can text him, say, hey, Joe, this isn't right. So you have to understand, because my audience as well, I've seen people in my audience try and go after people, other left-wing commentators, for not calling out Rogan. When different people are in different positions in relation to Rogan, and you have to understand that the calculus changes depending on who you are. So if you've been on his show, you kind of have to walk a tightrope here when it comes to addressing these sorts of controversies, because you still want to be able to educate his friggin' massive audience. He has a massive tens of millions of people watch or listen to his show. So it's important to keep that in mind before you try and attack people for not calling this out. But me as somebody, I don't care. I'm going to call out his lies when I see it, and I'm also going to give him credit when I see it as well, as I've done recently when he went after Ben Shapiro, or not went after, but when he corrected Ben Shapiro, and here when he's apologizing. So good on Rogan for doing this. My hair is really it's really great. It's just the one side. It's like I'm trying to fly away here. It's like a bird. Um, I can't do anything about this. I mean, I could. I could do something about this. I could cut it, but at this point, it's fine. It adds character. Adds character to this show. All right. Let me prep the next video here. Oh wait, I think I saw a super chat come in. Let me grab that. Or I think it was a super chat or membership. I don't know. I saw something. I'm gonna have to pull. I never have these windows ready. Oh, it may have been Streamlabs. All right, I'm gonna have to get to that later because that requires a whole login process. But I see some speculation in the chat, and maybe. There's no point for me to name names because I'm not even going after these people. I was just defending them. But if I was in their shoes, I likely wouldn't say anything either, because you have to understand it would actually likely do more harm than good if they did say something. If you have access to that audience of tens of millions to inform people on what is actually going on, it's important to keep open lines of communication. All right, super chats here. Samantha Sider says next few weeks going to be crazy in U.S. Yeah, this election, it's like a month and a half away. A month and a half away. Wow. Pop Reality says, amazing that Rogan has more integrity than Cenk to admit wrongdoings. Cenk still peddles Russiagate. Okay. I'm not going to get into that conversation. I will say that Rogan has more integrity than a lot of people on mainstream media. I mean, if you... the amount of lie... I'll get to it. Not even just lies, but the amount of... Like, the way that stories are framed on MSNBC and CNN and Fox News, of course... But I'll get to some of that in a bit. They never apologize. These news anchors, whether it's whatever cable news station it is, they never apologize. Unless, as I covered yesterday on Fox News, Fox News apologized to Newt Gingrich for apparently cutting him off, even though they never did. So they'll apologize when they may lose a big conservative name, or they offend somebody on the right who's very powerful. Then they'll apologize. But when it comes to misinformation, very rarely, if ever. All right. This next story, let me just tell you right now. It's a little hefty. At least my notes are. It's possible I'll actually get through it a lot quicker than I think I will. But there's a lot to this. So just give me a minute here as I prep it. Talk amongst yourselves. There's an argument to make that I shouldn't... all the stories that I do live should just be really quick, easy ones. But yeah, this one has a lot to it. All right. All right. All right, now, I think I'm ready. Maybe. All right, there's a lot here, so if I fuck up, don't worry. I'll do some edits later. The University of Toronto has rescinded an employment offer to a prominent international academic, Valentina Azarova, because she's been critical of Israel's human rights abuses. Now, before I get into this is the kind of story where if it was, say, somebody who was critical of Palestinians and they lost a job or had a job offer rescinded because they were critical of Palestinians, you would hear people like Ben Shapiro, Dave Rubin, Jordan Peterson, the entire right wing. They would come out and talk about how, oh, look, free speech censorship. Look at this. Look what they're doing. Look what the left's doing. It happens to somebody who is critical of Israel's human rights abuses. Silence. So let me get deeper into this. This also led to the resignation of the Faculty Advisory Board on the International Human Rights Program. They're the ones that suggested Azarova for the director job. And the person who rescinded the offer is Edward Yacobucci, who is the law school dean. Now, let me get to more details here from the Toronto Star. Here we go. Several national and international scholars wrote to the university to express their consternation that the reversal came after reports of pressure from a sitting judge, a major donor to the faculty. He reportedly expressed concerns in private over Azarova's past work on the issue of Israel's human rights abuses in Palestine. All the letters mentioned here have been seen by the Star. So this job offer was rescinded because of a major donor to the faculty. This is how they actually alter the conversation. Especially on this issue, there is a lot of apprehension in being critical at all to Israel's human rights abuses. Even though they have been well documented, they've been recognized by the UN, recognized by human rights groups, yet still, you can have somebody lose their job for just saying what the UN has already recognized. Now, there's a little more detail here because there was, so the dean here claims that he did not make her an offer. So this gets to another issue where the dean at least is pretending that he did not make her an offer, but there's been an update to the story showing that, in fact, he did. So one email from Assistant Dean Alexis Archibald on August 21st to Audrey Macklin and Wong says in part, quote, spoke to the UT employment lawyers today, and they confirmed that we can hire Valentina as an independent contractor and roll her into the permanent position when she has her permit in hand. Valentina is happy with this. So right there, actually, I think there's one more quote here, or one more paragraph. As for the faculty's timing needs, another email from Archibald to Macklin and Wong on August 20th says, quote, in a nutshell, we are hoping to work out a way for Valentina to start work for us before she has a Canadian work permit in hand. Valentina is willing to start working remotely immediately. She plans to move to Canada by December. So they had claimed, the university had claimed that they did not offer her a job. And it was because there were issues over immigration. Because right now the border is basically closed because of COVID. So they're having issues with that. That's what they were saying. But the reality is they actually clearly did offer her this position, as these emails show. And there are others that have come out as well to acknowledge their awareness of this hiring. So Kevin John Heller here, who is a professor of international law and security at the University of Copenhagen, tweeted out saying, as the article reports, U of T claims it never made Azarova an offer, so it did not rescind one. This is what is known as a lie. They most certainly made her an offer, and she accepted it. It's shocking the university would claim otherwise and will blow up in their face, as this was tweeted yesterday, as it already is blowing up in their face with this new story. He goes on to say, even worse, U of T's idiotic statement inadvertently admits it isn't telling the truth. The quote-unquote cross-border legal and technical constraints mentioned in the statement concerned the need for Azarova to arrange her work permit. So that's what I read you through those emails. Let me read one more piece here from this article that goes into a little more detail about why they chose Azarova initially. So they say here, quote, Azarova, the hiring committee's top candidate, accepted the faculty's offer in mid-August, wrote Carmen Chung and the most recent director, Samir Muscati. The Faculty of Law put Dr. Azarova in touch with the Immigration Council to advise her on her options for securing a permit to work in Canada. And Dr. Azarova began planning to move with her partner from Germany to Toronto, where her stepchildren reside. A little more here. She's a fellow at the Manchester. She's a fellow at the Manchester International Law Centre, University of Manchester, speaks multiple languages, and has lived in the Middle East and Africa. The university program itself is known to offer learning opportunities for students, exposing them to national and international human rights concerns. Professors told The Star that while even controversial views cannot be censored, those espoused by Azarova are not radical and adhere to mainstream legal consensus on Israeli settlements in Palestinian territories. So, Azarova's comments on Israel's human rights abuses aren't even nothing crazy here, nothing extreme, not even like supporting BDS, for example. Maybe she does, but that's not what they're even citing here. She's acknowledged the obvious: Israeli settlements in Palestinian territory. And that's why they rescinded the job offer. Because one prominent donor, was unhappy. And you're not going to see any conservative cover this. None of them will cover this. Yet they will claim, oh, it's the left doing the censoring, it's always the left. And guess what? Unfortunately, because they all do that in unison, they're the ones that create this bullshit narrative that people like Joe Rogan catch on to and spread on his massive platform to tens of millions. I mean, the amount of times, not to go off on a tangent here, but as somebody who used to listen to Rogan's show a lot, the amount of times I've had to stop listening to that podcast because just the mountains of misinformation he starts to spread about only left-wing silencing voices, when yes, that does happen. It also happens here. And this is never brought up. This is never brought into the conversation. Not even to mention the actual risks to free speech when it comes to, say, Bill Barr right now, and him suggesting locking up protesters for sedition and locking up the Seattle mayor, or the coronavirus impact of Trump. Anyways, I'm going on a different tangent about Rogan here, but the issue ultimately here is why or how these narratives are formed about censorship. Because we can, on one hand, yes, acknowledge that censorship does happen on the left. It happens. It also happens all the time on the right. And not only this kind of censorship, but also when it comes to people in power, with political power. So there has to be a different way to address these issues where we can actually look at this with a clear head and understand that these narratives are being formed in one particular way to push a certain narrative, while those same people who claim to care about free speech are going to completely ignore the story. All right. There you go. There's a lot to that. And stories like that, let's be honest, not a very sexy story, but very important when it comes to covering shit like that and attempting to change the narrative when it comes to some of these some of this right-wing bullshit that we have been just constantly bombarded with. All right, let me grab some chats. I don't know how to say your name, but Sigliosa, I think I got your last name. Sigliosa says it's how they do it now. Spread a lie, then apologize. I agree with you when it comes to certain people. Look, I've watched Rogan for maybe, I don't know, 8 years. I've watched that podcast for a lot less now than I used to. But he just doesn't know any better, man. Like, I'm telling you, part of the appeal of that podcast is that he is kind of your average Joe. And, but the downside to that is he will fall into just complete misinformation when it comes to certain right-wing framing, certain reactionary takes. Like, he'll fall into that constantly. When the show, was still a little younger, he didn't do that as much. Likely because he wasn't consuming that information or those sources as much as he is now. But I think intent matters when it comes to an apology. I don't think, like, in terms of the actual impact, I hear you, because people heard that podcast, believed him, are not going to see the apology, and they're going to think people on the left are starting fires. But when it comes to this hair is really fucking bothering me. This is really bothering me. Wait, here we go. No, it's not gonna happen. All right, just got to deal with a wing off my head. All right, what was I saying? Intent matters. Intent matters when it comes to apologies. But I hear you when it comes to the actual impact, because people will see that initial thing, not see his apology, and believe that people on the left are starting fires when they're not. Anyways, GT Darling says red and blue states should separate or something like that. Clearly we have different values. Fighting every 4 years is exhausting. You're talking about a civil war. That's not gonna, I mean, that could happen, but you don't want that to happen. No. And there's a story that I read today. I didn't have time to prep it, but there is I forget how to frame this properly, or I'm not sure how to frame this properly. But there are scholars saying that the U.S. right now is in a situation where there is a 1 in 5 shot of them not becoming a dictatorship. So, like, when I read stuff like that, there's a 4 to 5 chance that the U.S. will turn into a dictatorship. That shit freaks me out. And, just to help you explain, or to help me explain to you my thought process when it comes to some of this shit, this is why misinformation bugs me as much as it does. When someone has an audience of tens of millions, it pisses me off that they have that platform and are using it to make people even more dumb than they already are. So, yeah, I worry about that. But no, you should not separate the states. That would not be a good idea. Adam Bryson says, "Hey David, I may visit Toronto next year. Could we possibly meet for coffee or something and talk if you're free? Just curious. Hope all's good, bro." I'd have to do a meetup or something. I recognize your name because you are a supporter, but I'm a little weird about that kind of stuff. I mean, understand, I grew up with severe social phobia. So the idea of meeting somebody I've never met, which is how you meet people, but meeting somebody just from the internet, I don't know. I'm a little weird about that, unless it's like a big group, some kind of meetup, something we can consider. But we're gonna have to see if this virus even goes away. Let's wait for a vaccine, ensure we're all safe, Border has to be opened, of course, and see where everything goes. Adam Dwyer says, I'm surprised there isn't a rule for X amount of debates. State and federal candidates need to participate in order to be on the ballot. Tired of incumbents like Pelosi and others dodging debates. Yeah, I read somewhere that I don't think Pelosi has been in a debate since 1990 or 1991, something like that. She hasn't actually had to participate in a debate since the very early 90s or late 80s. And she's had power for that long. It is unbelievable what we allow some of these political leaders to get away with. To be in power for that long and never have to defend any of your ideas for over 30 years, it's crazy. It's crazy. But yeah, I'm totally with you. They should be required to have to defend their ideas at least once every cycle. All right, pausing there. Let me get to stories that are a little less dense. In fact, this one isn't dense at all, but I think you'll dig it. Really, anytime I get to cover the media, that's what I enjoy most. I'm definitely a media studies minded person. All right. I think we're good here. Okay. MSNBC host Let me start over. MSNBC host Stephanie Ruhle went after Joe Biden for reaching out to working class voters. This is a short clip, but it really tells you everything you need to know.
Michael, Joe Biden said yesterday that his campaign is Scranton versus Park Avenue. Why is he going with this divide and conquer approach? That's Trump's thing. What about a message for all Americans? I don't live on Park Avenue, but I live pretty close to it. And you know how I got there? Working my butt off. He doesn't want my vote?
I'll play it again for the live audience here because it was kind of low.
Michael, Joe Biden said yesterday that his campaign is Scranton versus Park Avenue. Why is he going with this divide and conquer approach? That's Trump's thing. What about a message for all Americans? I don't live on Park Avenue, but I live pretty close to it. And you know how I got there? Working my butt off. He doesn't want my vote?
All right. This is insane. Right now you have record unemployment, an eviction crisis, family living paycheck to paycheck. And Stephanie Ruhle is all about rich lives matter. It shows you how out of touch mainstream media is with the average person. And that it's not just, like, this is not somebody who is simply towing a line. No, she's rich. She's incredibly wealthy. Her view of the world is very different than the average person. To not recognize the unique time you are in right now, with this pandemic, with this crisis, this economic crisis, the way it's impacting people, to be bothered over a single line in a speech. Joe Biden is not this major champion of the working class. People know that. All he did was, through rhetoric, discuss how, you know, he's going to fight more for the average person than the wealthy. Just rhetoric. And she's still bothered by that. She's bothered by a crumb for the working class. That bothers her. Now, the other part here, working my butt off. this is straight out of the Republican playbook. That, oh, if you're not successful, if you're facing eviction, well, that's your fault. It's because you didn't work hard enough. If you do just an ounce of research, the one thing that dictates your success in life the most, that is likely to predict how successful you're going to be, is what zip code you're born into. It's all about where you're born. That's rolling dice. You can't pick where you're going to be born, where you're going to live. So if you grow up in a poor neighborhood, you are more likely to be poor as an adult. If you grow up wealthy, like maybe Stephanie Ruhle did, it's going to be a little different. So let me touch on a bit of that here. Scott Glenn, this random Twitter user, got to give him credit here, pulled this out of Wikipedia. So Stephanie Ruhle's early life. Her parents are Frank and Louise Ruhle, and she was raised in Park Ridge, New Jersey. She is a graduate of Lay University, where she earned her bachelor's degree in international business in 1997. As part of her major, she studied in Guatemala, Italy, and Kenya. Ruhle returned to Lay to give the 2017 commencement address. This is the median household income of where she grew up. Over $100,000. She's privileged, which is fine. Many people are privileged, but it's important to recognize when you are and to maybe work to help others who are not as lucky as you are. I'm pretty lucky. Not maybe as lucky as Ruhle is, but I grew up well off. I spend my time now trying to inform others of what needs to be done to help everybody else. But instead, Stephanie Ruhle goes on television and complains when Biden makes one comment reaching out to the working class. Also here, during that same time, while this is the median income of her of where she grew up, this is the median household income of the U.S. as a whole, 61 grand, showing you, again, she grew up in a much more privileged area. Also worth mentioning, she has a $7.5 million townhouse. I'm going to guess it's worth a little bit more now, as this was in 2017. And I think I have one more thing here. Yes, this is just to show you the latte liberal brain. This is not Stephanie Ruhle, but it is someone much like her, Soledad O'Brien here. Biden just tweeting out again. This election is Scranton versus Park Avenue. Soledad, someone else who was incredibly wealthy and privileged, really bothered by this. Or both. New York City's Park Avenue is amazing. No need to knock it. Would be nice to have a president who sees every American as worth fighting for. Thank you. Yes, because the Soledads of the world, the Stephanie Ruhles, they have it really bad right now. Got to focus on rich lives matter. Got to care about the rich. If this doesn't show you how out of touch these people are and why you should never listen to them when it comes to their political analysis, I don't know what can. Now, again, that isn't to say, Soledad, forget about it. I muted her a while ago. But Stephanie Ruhle has had on people like Bernie Sanders. They've had good conversations before. She's been able to report, reality at times. I think she even had a video on democratic socialism once that wasn't horrible. So you have to be able to, also parse that out and understand that they're capable of doing good work at times. But ultimately, when you see them view their own opinions, as we do here, the real truth comes out. All right. Probably the most enjoyable story of the day. Actually, no. We got some Joe Biden stuff coming up later, and I have not seen all the clips. So just didn't have time to watch it all. So I will be reacting to some of that town hall along with the rest of you. Let me grab some chats here. Ravi Premi says, meet strangers by maintaining 12 feet distance. Thank you for the big donation, Ravi. I assume you're joking here, but yeah, it's hard to even have a conversation at 6 feet, let alone 12 feet. Alnady says, hello, David. Just tuned in. Best from Etobicoke. Etobicoke? What up, Etobicoke? I have some family there. Great place. Victor Valencia says, hi, David. Love that show. My Twitter account was banned for following progressives like you and others. Wait, what? Hi, David. Love that show. I guess you mean my show. My Twitter account was banned for following progressives like you and other like-minded. Since this past August, is it legal? I don't know what you're saying. I can guarantee you were not banned for following me. You maybe you were banned for something you said or something else. Yes, it's legal to follow me. I'm not even sure. I feel like I'm misreading your message here because it doesn't make a lot of sense. But I don't think you were banned for following me. Gina McGrath says, hi, David. Have you seen the GOAT, Dr. Cornel West, explain democratic socialism to Tucker Carlson? West may have gotten through to him, but not likely. That video, I saw it. It's from 2 years ago. So, no, he did not. Tucker's really good at acting. Shockingly. He knows how to play people. So, if you saw that video, again, I'm not going to find it now because there's no point even playing it. Again, it's 2 years old. But Cornel West basically explains how socialism is about caring for one another and, trying to lift up the working class. And Tucker Carlson says, well, if that's what it is, then I agree with that. And then for the next 2 years, as you've seen, all he has done is fearmonger AOC, Bernie Sanders, the rest, scary socialism, all that shit. Never give Tucker any credit for anything. He is a master manipulator. So you have to understand his play there. His attempt there was to reach out to the working class, possibly even try to reach out to democratic socialists who were watching that episode because Cornel West was on it, and make people think, hey, Tucker's now on board for democratic socialism. Okay, I'll check in tomorrow, where he is discussing how AOC is gonna destroy the country. So like, it's his attempt to try to get you into his ecosystem. Don't fall for it. And again, it was 2 years old. Clearly, we've seen from the past 2 years, Tucker is not a democratic socialist. Okay. Pausing there to prep the next story. Do I look really disheveled to you? I feel like I'm just like a bum. I'm just a total bum right now. It's just bum time right here. This is bum time. I should change the show to bum time. The rational bum. Man. If Biden wins, or I should say if Trump loses, because that's ultimately what I want. If Trump loses, I will cut my hair. If Trump steals the election, I will look like the end of the world. That's kind of my attempt here. Is to simply reflect reality right now. Okay. Okay, this next story is pretty good too. I'm hearing some chats come in. I'll grab those after this next story. Does anyone else notice how many friggin' ads are on websites now? Holy shit. It's making, like, the way I do this show, having a sidebar and everything, it's making it a lot tougher. Because some of them, they will not get rid of the ads. Like, I try to zoom into the text, and they'll zoom in the ad as well. So I just have a half screen of text and half screen of ad, and it's becoming a little frustrating to do this kind of format. Okay. A former Mike Pence aide, Olivia Troy, has come out and denounced Donald Trump, and has also revealed something that he has said privately that I would assume his supporters wouldn't like to hear, but because they're his supporters, are likely not going to believe it. Though I think it's clearly very believable. But let me play her clip here discussing how she feels.
I'm Olivia Troy. I was Homeland Security and Counterterrorism Advisor to Vice President Pence and served as Vice President Pence's lead staff member on the COVID-19 response. You know, I'd been on the COVID task force from day one. I mean, the virus was very unpredictable at the beginning. There were a lot of unknowns, but towards the middle of February, we knew it wasn't a matter of if COVID would become a big pandemic here in the United States, it was a matter of when. But the president didn't want to hear that because his biggest concern was that we were in an election year, and how is this going to affect what he considered to be his record of success? It was shocking to see the president saying that the virus was a hoax, saying that everything's okay when we know that it's not. The truth is, he doesn't actually care about anyone else but himself. He made a statement once that was very striking. I never forgot it because it pretty much defined who he was. When we were in a task force meeting, the president said, maybe this COVID thing is a good thing. I don't like shaking hands with people. I don't have to shake hands with these disgusting people. Those disgusting people are the same people that he claims to care about. These are the people still going to his rallies today who have complete faith in who he is. If the president had taken this virus seriously, or if he had actually made an effort to tell how serious it was, he would have slowed the virus spread. He would have saved lives. It was the opportunity and honor of a lifetime to be able to serve in the White House. I put my heart and soul into this role every single day. But at some point, I would come home at night, I would look myself in the mirror and say, are you really making a difference? Does it matter? Because no matter how hard you work and what you do, the president is going to do something that is detrimental to keeping Americans safe, which is why you signed up for this role. It was awful. It was terrifying. I have been a Republican for my entire life. I am a McCain Republican, I am a Bush Republican, and I am voting for Joe Biden because I truly believe we are at a time of constitutional crisis. At this point, it's country over party.
All right. Now, if there are any conservatives that are still gettable, though I highly doubt there are, maybe a handful, but if they exist, videos like this should do something. You have somebody here who worked in the White House, and she isn't saying anything out of the ordinary. We already heard from the Bob Woodward audio tapes that Trump purposely downplayed the virus. He understood the threat and downplayed it on purpose because he didn't want that to hurt him. So nothing said here is crazy. It all makes sense. But the one thing I do pull out of here that is 100% definitely true, and to me hilarious, is when she says that Trump said he doesn't want to have to shake hands with these disgusting people, talking about his own supporters. If you're a supporter of his, again, you're not going to believe it because you're a supporter of Trump, but that should bother you. That said, I totally agree. Shaking hands is a very disgusting act. I mean, if we think about it now, think of how many times you've likely gotten sick because you shook somebody's hand. I think we should all go to bowing. Makes a lot more sense, a little more clean. But when it comes to Trump being afraid of germs, this is well known. Of course he said this. But for him to have this amount of hatred for his own base, I just find it to be comical, because it's the only people he continues to try to win over. I mean, if he actually wanted to expand his base, he would try and be a good person. He would try and be a good president. But he has no interest in actually doing good. He just has the interest in speaking to his existing base, which is shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. But let me get to, so Pence responded to this. This is from CNBC. Pence said Thursday that he hadn't read the comments in detail. Quote, reads to me like one more disgruntled employee who's left the White House, decided to play politics during an election year. He told reporters at the White House, according to a pool report. This is something you will notice about Pence. He will not deny something if it's true. Where did he deny here? Anything that Olivia Troy said. He didn't. It's like, oh, I didn't read it, which is very convenient way to avoid having to directly answer anything. I didn't see the full comments. I don't know. She sounds disgruntled, not denying her exact words about the shaking hands or about anything else, because you can't deny it. He knows it's real. And at some point, look, I assume Pence is going to try and parachute out of this. If Trump loses, he's going to try and save his career somehow. He's going to try and do a complete shift. Write a book explaining his time there. Like, Pence wants to monetize his time in the White House, and we should understand that we cannot let him do that. There has to be charges laid. They have to be, and unfortunately, there's not going to be, because there never is. But these people have to be held accountable for the destruction that they caused, for the destruction they allowed to continue during this pandemic. One more thing here. A little reminder of how shitty things are. Because when you're in the middle of the garbage, sometimes you don't notice you're in the garbage. But a new study here, or a new report or analysis here out in the Washington Post, the U.S. is undergoing a substantial autocratization under Trump. Historic data show that only 1 in 5 democracies that start down this path are able to reverse the damage before succumbing to full-blown autocracy. So I read this and I freaked the hell out. You have a 1 in 5 shot at reversing course, meaning there is a 4 out of 5 chance that it's going to get worse. Just keep that in mind come election day. And understand that also voting isn't your only option, isn't your only tool here. Voting, of course, definitely vote. Very important. But you have to continue to stay engaged in whatever way you can. Be it in local races, state races, or even in political groups like the DSA or Black Lives Matter. There are various ways that you can use your power to try and move the country into a more into a direction that's rid of this bullshit. And all of it starts though with getting out this president, because if he doesn't lose in November, it's just going to get a lot worse. Okay. All right, we'll go to Biden Town Hall. This is this hair. It's the least important thing right now, but it's bugging. It's really bugging me. This whole week, I've just been stories like this. With every day that passes, I get a little more scared that he's not going to get out. And I really don't want to be covering Trump come January. I don't. I am so, apart from the obvious destruction and death that he has caused, apart from that obvious part, just as a personal matter, I do not want to talk about Trump anymore. I am so over this presidency. And it is so destructive. It's really, here's the reality. It's really fucking hard to fight fascism. It's really fucking hard. When there is no reality, there is no truth, there is no facts, there's just power, and we have none. At least, if Trump's out, we get to return to some kind of conversation about policy. I can't do 4 more years of this. I can't. But let me move on before I make you all really sad, as I'm seeing some of the chat here. Brian Bedlam, I'm sorry. I'm bringing you down. I apologize. Let's pick back up. I mean, when your job is to cover this shit, I enjoy what I do. I really do. I enjoy what I do. But day in, day out, when this is your life, absorbing reality from all across the world, and across my own border, it weighs on you. And it's really important to have vacations. It's really important to have some time away to go to a beach, and I can't even do that because pandemic, border closed, can't go anywhere in Canada, got no options here. So stuck indoors sunbathing in 14 degrees Celsius weather. It's great. No escape at all. Anyway, sorry. I keep rambling on. Let me grab some chats and then go on to this Biden stuff. And hopefully have a little more fun. All right. Anton River says, Cabbagetown, Toronto loves you. Wow. Anton, thank you. Thank you. I love Cabbagetown. In fact, I used to live near Cabbagetown. Fernando Mata says, my grandmother passed away almost 2 months ago. Pneumonia being the cause of death, but she tested positive for COVID. Please just wear a mask, people. Yeah, I agree with you, Fernando. Sorry to hear about your grandmother. Yeah. It's not too much to ask to wear a mask. It really isn't. Even if you don't believe it, which I don't know why you'd be watching this channel, but even if you're a person who doesn't believe it, what's the downside? What's the downside? Just wear a mask. Kevin Elkin says, if Kamala ends up being president before 2024, do you think she can get primaried? If not, you think Biden could? Sorry for a random question. That's not random at all. Good question. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, it was somebody who has been criticized as being a little too in the center. Michael Schur, he's on 2AT quite a bit. He made a case that Kamala is not safe in 2024. And I thought it was actually a solid case. Because if you think about it, this is the way, from memory, of course, I'm piecing this together. But the way he explained it is that Biden is somebody who likely is going to go till the very end, until the very last moment where he can say that he's not going to run again in 2024. Meaning that Kamala has less of a runway to campaign. And you could already have people getting their name out there, getting their campaigns ready, raising money, giving speeches in an attempt to primary Joe Biden or Kamala, whoever it is. And especially, this is the most important piece of this. If Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are as status quo neoliberal as we expect them to be, that means they are not going to fundamentally solve any of the real issues facing Americans. There's not going to be Medicare for all. There's not going to be substantial free public college. I mean, it's in his plan. Is it really going to be implemented? We're going to find out. But the eviction crisis, like, what's their answer to that? A UBI right now during this crisis, they aren't planning that. Kamala Harris backed that in the Senate not a year ago, but early in the pandemic. Now has backed off of it because Biden doesn't support a UBI. So if there is no real help for people and there aren't any real changes, a primary from the left can be very successful. So I would not write off 2024 at all. I think it's very possible. Because right now, basically people are voting to get rid of Trump. If you look at the polling, look at the data, Democratic voters are not excited about Joe Biden. Enthusiasm is very low. I believe even lower than Hillary Clinton's enthusiasm. But Biden has higher numbers because they hate Trump. They want to vote out Trump. So in 4 years, there is no real attachment to Joe Biden. Kamala Harris is, for the most part, going to be behind the scenes. And even when she's in the spotlight, there is no real foundational change, no real progressive help for people. So having a challenge, I think, has a solid shot at being successful. Which, again, I mean, this is the perfect time to dump a crisis on a Democratic White House. Show Democratic voters that Joe Biden, Kamala Harris don't have the answers. Yes, they're going to stop the bleeding. Hopefully, the culture will shift a little bit. Hopefully. Unlikely, but hopefully. But at least in terms of the way that the president conducts himself, right now you have Trump, who is enabling right-wing acts of terror. You've seen over the past 4 years, there's been a massive increase in hate crimes under Trump. So Joe Biden, Kamala Harris will stop a lot of that aspect of it, I think. Maybe not immediately, but in a couple of years, I think some of that will die off a little bit. But when it comes to the economic situation, healthcare, they don't have the answers. So yes, challenge them in 4 years. Laren Williams says, if Trump wins, we'll all look like the end is near. We'll all look like the end is near. Yes. You will all look like me. You will all have wacky hair, wrinkled shirts, beards that need to be trimmed. Yes. I agree with you. Abel Soul, thank you for your super chat. Gina McGrath says, my bad, I didn't know that video was 2 years ago. No worries. A lot of people didn't know it was old. I don't know why it was just recently. It went viral recently, discussing the Tucker Carlson Cornel West clip that's been going around on Twitter. But yeah, it's a couple years old. Bose Einstein says Trump's herd immunity plan kills 3 million more Americans. Projection shows 7 out of 10 people will get COVID in the U.S. Is that actually his plan? I need to do more reading. There's too much shit coming out of this administration. I heard some rumblings about Trump basically discussing or fighting for herd immunity as his plan, but I'm not sure he's actually said that explicitly. But I mean, that's kind of the way they're conducting themselves. But yeah, obviously, isn't that what I think Sweden did that? Don't quote me on this, but I think it was Sweden who basically their approach to COVID was a lot different than other European nations, and you saw in the results. They had a massive spike in cases compared to other European countries. So, of course, you can't go the herd immunity route. It's insane. Pausing there. Let's get to Joe Biden at this drive-through town hall. Or drive-in town hall, I guess. Gotta prep this. And I have not seen... I guess I should save most of my commentary for when I start this video. But I have not seen most of these clips. All right. Snow White, I see your question. I will get to it after this next story, as the rest of you. All right. On Thursday, Joe Biden had a drive-in town hall where the setup is actually really interesting. There's cars in a parking lot. I guess the whole setup, the stage is in a parking lot, and people walked out of their cars and asked Joe Biden a question. And I'm going to show you some clips. So I actually have not seen most of these clips. I've seen bits and pieces, but I've not seen most of them. I'm going to play these and then give you my reaction and thoughts.
I'm an Army veteran who served in Afghanistan 2013-14. I want to know, if you are elected, will you bring my brothers and sisters home? End our military involvement in these unnecessary, endless wars that don't have any end in sight.
Yes, I would. It's now public knowledge. I was opposed to the significant increase in our presence at the time in Afghanistan. And because I thought the only presence we should have is a counter-terrorism presence, not a counterinsurgency presence. The idea that we're ever going to break up the Haqqani network in eastern Pakistan, western Pakistan, is just not going to happen. But we have to be in a position where we can make it clear that if need be, we could respond to terrorist activities coming out of that region directed toward the United States. It does not require a large force presence. We got that presence down to lower than it is now. This presence is the one that's increased the number, not reduced the number.
All right. First impressions here. Biden's getting through complete thoughts, complete sentences. Good to see. A year ago, during the Democratic primary debates, most of those debates, he was kind of out of it until, of course, the last debate he had with Bernie, all of a sudden he was like able to perform at almost 2016 levels. But good response here. I mean, it's true. Trump increased troops and then brought some home, and then pretended that he was actually reducing his presence, or the U.S. military presence in the Middle East, when in reality he had already increased his presence there. So this is often what you will see. I mean, I cover this a lot during the RNC. They will essentially try and take both sides of every issue. That way, the unsuspecting viewer watches it, and they'll hear what they like. So if Trump says, or someone supporting Trump says, Rand Paul, for example, discussed how Trump is anti-war. Trump is the anti-war president. Complete BS. But then later in that same night, you had Eric Trump go out and talk about how Donald Trump, my father, is fighting terrorism around the world. He killed terrorist leader. Like, basically doing the exact opposite in terms of their framing around foreign policy, around war. So you have, on one hand, Rand Paul, Trump's anti-war. On the other hand, Eric Trump, Trump's actually pro-war. You hear what you like. And that's the approach that Trump has taken in this campaign as well. But Joe Biden is right to point out that he increased troops, that Trump increased troops. And it is true, reporting did come out that Biden was against the increase as well as Obama's VP. So not a bad answer here. I'm also glad that CNN brought this veteran on to ask this question. Usually the discussion around foreign policy is always very pro-war. So it's good to hear a different kind of question there. Let me go to the next one. This is on, I believe, William Barr.
The comments by the Attorney General contribute to people, encourage people not to wear masks.
Sure, quite frankly, they're sick. Think about it. Did you ever think, any of you, you'd hear Attorney General say that following the recommendations of the scientific community to save your and other people's lives is equivalent to slavery, people being put in chains? You lost your freedom because he didn't act. The freedom to go to that ball game, the freedom of your kid to go to school, the freedom to see your mom or dad in the hospital. the freedom just to walk around your neighborhood because of failure to act responsibly. Anderson, I've been doing this a long time. I never, ever, ever thought I would see such a thoroughly, totally irresponsible administration. It's one of the reasons why, if you take a look, the Pew Foundation poll, guess what? Russia, Putin, China, Xi Jinping are trusted by more of the people in the world than the President of the United States of America. And one of the reasons they cite is COVID, the way he's handled COVID. This is not only causing us lives lost here, it's causing us to lose our influence in ways that are profound.
All right. The beginning part of the answer was good. He kind of shoehorned in there Russia and China. I think a better segue would have been to discuss the U.S. coronavirus cases compared to other major countries around the world. I do this all the time on my channel. There's a graph I always reference showing you how many more cases there are in the U.S. compared to the U.K., Canada, Australia, basically any other major country, except for like Brazil, also run by a neo-fascist. So that's a better segue. I think, I mean, really, the campaign needs to harp a lot on that because many Americans are going to say, well, yeah, it's a pandemic. People are dying, of course. So, these numbers, when they get up to the hundreds of thousands, people kind of lose contact with reality of how big those numbers are. But when you compare them to other major countries, that gives you real context to understanding how bad the numbers in the U.S. Actually are. And one thing on the masks, a story came out. I'm not sure if it came out yesterday or today. I think yesterday. But the USPS had planned to send out, I believe, 5 masks per household back in April. They had a plan. It was all ready. They were going to send out cotton masks to everybody in the country. And Trump stopped it. Imagine the difference it would have made if you had those masks sent out and at the same time as well, Trump being a leader, trying to be a leader for once, and actually saying, you should wear these when you go out. It's important to not spread your germs out. Obviously, wearing a mask prevents more of your, the air you breathe, your germs, more of it from going out than it would otherwise. I mean, the fact that I have to explain this to people, obviously a mask helps. This is why doctors, surgeons wore masks before the pandemic. They have an effect. But if Trump had done that and allowed these masks to be sent out, he could be seeing much bigger poll numbers right now. Trump could be seeing much higher poll numbers right now than he currently is against Biden. But he didn't. So the virus got out of hand and tens of thousands more people died than needed to. Next clip here. I am not sure what this is about, but let's check it out.
Could you see a scenario where you downplayed critical information so as not to cause panic?
Not at all. The idea that you're going to not tell people what you've been told, that this virus is incredibly contagious, 7 times more contagious than the flu. You breathe the air, you get it sucked into your lungs. What has he done? Imagine, and by the way, Columbia University Medical School pointed out, if he had just acted 1 week earlier, he would have saved 37,000 lives. All the way back, and I was on one of your shows, all the way back in March, I was calling for the need for us to have masks, have the president stand and tell us what's going on. But he knew it. He knew it and did nothing. It's close to criminal.
We've got a question from William Tripp O'Malley, a social studies teacher, over here, from Dunmore. He's a Democrat. Tripp?
My dad's from Dunmore.
Mr. Vice President, the messaging on the coronavirus from the White House has been all over the place since February. It's been extremely inconsistent. It's caused so many people in this country to ignore the virus and not take the necessary precautions. How will you get the proper messaging out to all Americans to keep them informed as to how to properly protect themselves and others from this pandemic?
What presidents say matter. People listen. I will make it clear what is needed to be done. I cannot mandate people wearing masks, but we've just been told we should expect another 215,000 dead by January. But if we wore masks, we'd save 100,000 of those lives, doing nothing but that. We have to make sure we lay out to the American people the truth, tell them the truth. And I would make sure that I would call every governor in the country into the White House, say, you should be putting mandates out. If they don't, I'd call the mayors in their towns and their cities and say, put out mandates. You can save lives. And we should be providing for the PPE, the protective gear that is needed. Look, you know what recently happened? The President of the United States said that no longer would we, in fact, provide masks for schools. For schools, pay them to have the mask in school because it was not a national emergency. What is he talking about? It's totally irrational. And look, this is all about one thing, the stock market. He doesn't want to see anything happen. It's all about his reelection. It should be about the American people, and they're in trouble. And if we don't do it, and by the way, his own CDC director contradicted him recently. He said, if in fact you just wore this mask, nothing else but this mask, you would save between now and January another 100,000 lives. And so we have to be honest with the American people. They're tough. They know, as Franklin Roosevelt said, things get worse and worse before they get better and better, but you got to level with the American people, shoot from the shoulder. There's never been a time they've not been able to step up. This president should step down.
Okay. More mask talk. Honestly, not much to comment on there. I'll likely edit that out if I cut this video out later. There's just nothing there. Let's check out this one.
I'm home, and right now I do work in a cancer center in the area. I make under $15 an hour.
Oh.
During these COVID times, unfortunately, I had to open a credit card with 25% interest just to cover my groceries. I'm barely making ends meet. Receive no hazard pay, no raise. I'm struggling not only mentally, but financially. I look up to you, and as a middle-class healthcare worker, do you have any plans to stand up for us healthcare workers?
Absolutely. And the idea you're not making a minimum of $15 an hour is just wrong. Wrong. No one should have to work 2 jobs to be able to get out of poverty. You're busting your neck, and what you're doing is you're saving people's lives.
Exactly.
You're helping them, and you're risking your own in this moment of COVID. You know better than I do that what happens is a pre-existing condition. In fact, what's happening here is a lot of people who have cancer, who are taking various drugs, and they, in fact, are more susceptible to catching COVID and dying than anyone else. So first of all, thank you. Number 2, the reason I'm running is because, look, the interesting thing for me is I view I really do view this campaign as a campaign between Scranton and Park Avenue. And I really mean it because, you know, the way we were raised up here in this area, awful lot of hard work and people busted their neck. All they asked for is a shot, just a shot. All that Trump could see from Park Avenue is Wall Street. All he thinks about is the stock market and telling, we're going to do all right. Everybody owns stock. How many of you all own stock in Scranton? In my neighborhood in Scranton, not a whole lot of people own stock. No. And so we have to make sure that healthcare workers are paid and paid a decent wage. And $15 an hour isn't enough for a healthcare worker. And so, again, I won't take the time now, but Joe, if I can get your address, definitely. Let me get you. Go to joebiden.com, and you'll see what I talk about needing to be done with regard to healthcare workers. And by the way, mental health. You know as well as I do, and the nurse who was just up here knows. We're in desperate need. There are more people who are at risk and worried today than any time in modern times, and especially the youngest generation. People between the ages of 7 and 17, they are more at risk in terms of mental insecurity than any generation. And that's why we have to make sure we have more social workers and psychologists in our schools. We have, look, we learned drug abuse doesn't cause mental illness. Mental stress and mental illness cause drug abuse. We've learned so much that we could change so much. And that's why we have to make sure that the super wealthy start paying their fair share. So we can do the things we have to do to make life better for hardworking middle-class folks.
All right. So some stuttering issues there, whatever. I stutter sometimes. That's life. But ultimately, this is something that Biden has that Trump doesn't. And that's the ability to have a human connection. Now, yes, of course, criticize his horrible record. The crime bill being the perfect example of that back in the 90s. But Biden is somebody who he morphs with the times. I'm not saying, he's no progressive leader, not even close, but he's somebody who can have a conversation like this and has the ability to change minds, has the ability to make people care. And that does mean something. This kind of approach that people haven't seen for, at least 4 years, this does mean something. It has a cultural impact. As you've seen, or maybe you haven't seen, massive rise in hate crimes over the past 4 years under Trump. When you have a leader who just spews hate, it leads to a society that's chaotic, that mirrors what their leaders are doing, that enables the worst of society to come out. That's what Trump has done. So Biden here, by the way, his platform, it's not enough, but $15 minimum wage, that's in Biden's platform. 4 years ago, that was considered too high when Bernie Sanders was pushing for it. Biden supports it. Trump does not. There is going to be some differences. And as I said, it's not going to be enough. There's not going to be foundational change. You're not going to see Medicare for all from Biden. You're not going to see a universal basic income during this crisis from Biden. And you're not going to see a foreign policy that is really any different than the way it's been over the past 40 years, 50 years. But you do have the opportunity here, the left does, to dump a crisis on a neoliberal status quo administration in Joe Biden and Harris and show people that is not enough. It is the best, it would be the best recruiting tool to have Biden in the White House. People, the bleeding will stop, but their lives won't fundamentally be changed. Show people that what they're offering is not enough. And you're going to have, it's not just going to be people, on YouTube talking about this. People in Congress, AOC, Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, Jamal Bowman, Cori Bush. People, Congress people will actually be having these debates because they're going to be pushing for some real help, as they are right now, but it falls on deaf ears because Democrats have no real power. But if they have power, those debates will be had. So that's what I'm looking forward to. Of course, assuming Biden actually wins. But ultimately, from what I'm seeing here from these clips, he did all right. Though, I mean, here's the thing. The bar is so low. That's the other thing with this Trump administration. He's lowered the bar so much that a few Joe Biden clips actually seem appealing at times because of Trump. Because Trump has lowered the bar so much that Joe Biden became an acceptable Democratic nominee. If you had, I don't know, Marco Rubio as president, you would not have Joe Biden right now. It'd be somebody else. It likely would be Bernie Sanders, actually. But what Trump did was cause many Democratic voters to simply want to go back to nostalgia. Think about, in their mind, the good old days. Obviously, many problems during the Obama administration, but in their mind, that was the good old days before Trump. That's what it did. It lowered the bar to the point that Biden became acceptable. So the only way out of this is to end Trump and show people that what Biden and Harris are offering may stop the bleeding, but it's simply not going to be enough. All right. How many actual stories did I do today? Because I got some more here, but they're not really prepped properly. 1, 2, 3, 4. I think that's enough. Let me grab chats and then maybe let me just play. I had prepped this earlier. Let me show you here. I had prepped this earlier just as kind of to break up what I knew was going to be some madness during this live stream because of some of the stories here. But I saw this. It just cracked me up. This is for CBS News here. A new bronze statue of First Lady Melania Trump was unveiled in Slovenia this week after a wooden version of the memorial was burned in July. Check out this Melania Trump statue. Gonna take off the audio here for copyright reasons. But that slow reveal. Where's my audio? Which audio sound should I use here? This is really sad. Oh my God. I mean, I guess that could be her. All right. Shows you the kind of respect that her home country has for her. All right. Let me grab some chats and then maybe I will do some other stories here. God, too much happened this week. Too much. If I had like one more employee, which I may be able to have next year, would really be able to increase my output quite a bit so I can give you some more content. But let me grab some chats. After Fracture says, and sends a nice super chat, thank you. Says, how scared are you of a long turnaround for results? Cities swing Democratic / take longer. Mail-in ballots swing Democratic and take longer. The result of that could literally end in riots / deaths. I don't want to bring the whole chat down. I think I discussed a bit of this earlier. I'm worried. I'm worried that there's not going to be enough in-person Democratic voters, as many Democratic voters care about science, don't want to get sick, so they're going to mail their ballots in. And what's going to happen on Election Day is most of those in-person ballots are going to be Republicans. Trump's going to claim victory early on Election Day, even though the votes aren't counted. It'll take days to count the mail-in ballots that ultimately will show Biden won. But Trump's going to claim victory early and then do whatever he can to stop the counting of the mail-in ballots and say it's rigged. That's what's going to happen. So I'd be shocked if that doesn't happen. I would be shocked if Election Day everything is smooth. I would be shocked. So yes, what you just laid out there, very possible, which is why I said, if there's early voting in your area and you feel safe enough and you're healthy enough and you're not worried and you take the precautions, wear gloves, have a mask on, vote in person if you can. If you think it's safe, vote in person, because they're going to do whatever they can do with the mail-in ballots. Snow White says, do you think Nina Turner has a chance in 2024? She's my pick and your show is awesome. Yes, I do. In fact, when I was having my little 2024 rant earlier, Nina Turner is exactly who was in my mind. I think it's very possible that she would do well, because you can view her as sort of a political outsider, and that is appealing to a lot of people. But also at the same time, she knows her shit, obviously, and can go toe to toe with anybody, and is fighting for the people. So absolutely, if especially if she launches it early, at least a year before, yeah, I think Nina would have a shot. Jorge Mendez says, just want to say thank you for all the work you do. Thank you so much. Thanks for the super chat. Celeste says, it's my B-Day tomorrow. Just saying. Celeste, always a vocal supporter. Well, happy birthday. If I'm not on Twitch tomorrow to say happy birthday, happy birthday. Mateus N says, have you heard about the progressive Adam Christensen's run in Florida's 3rd District? He just won the primary and was interviewed on the Humanist Report. What do you think of him as a candidate? I don't know about him at all. Mike does such a great job at these races, at these congressional races. Check out his channel, watch that interview. I'm sure he did a fantastic job. I don't know Christensen. I haven't followed all the races. But if Mike interviewed him, then I'm sure he's great. Matt W. says Biden's track record as VP is 8 years at war. Yeah. Yeah, of course. That doesn't mean this is something I think it's important to be aware of when it comes to judging politicians. Look at what motivates them. So Biden's track record is 100% molded around public policy or public polling. So back when he brought in the crime bill, to be tough on crime was a popular position in polling. That's all Biden's driven by. Biden wants to be liked. If there is enough uproar, again, I'm under no illusions that he's going to do anything substantial like Medicare for all. I mean, he said as much that he would shoot it down. But if there is enough uproar and enough of a focus on what could be done to better people's lives, more is possible than would be under Trump. And I hope that's obvious. Trump isn't even just like, it's one thing if Trump was hitting the pause button. He's not. He's reversing progression. There's over 100 different environmental protections that Trump has reversed. That's not pausing. That's not progress, obviously. That's going backwards. It takes time to have to put all that shit back in place. So, and that's one example. The Iran deal that Trump tore up, that's going backwards. Biden wouldn't tear up Obama's Iran deal that he was a part of creating. So, like, you have to be able to look at the differences there. There is people saying, oh, you know, the lesser evil is still evil. Sure, but there's still differences there. Like, that comment or that statement, not that you're saying that, but when that statement is said, you are like, recognize that you are inherently ignoring nuance. You are purposely ignoring nuance because there is obvious nuance. There's an Iran deal or no Iran deal. That's a big fucking difference. And we saw how close the country came to war after Trump's approach to Iran. So understand that there's differences. And even if real progress isn't made, it's better than going backwards and seeing a rise in hate crimes, getting an Iran deal tore up, Trump restarting the Dakota Access Pipeline after Obama ended it. Like, to not recognize these obvious differences is just to ignore reality. Salt Fake News says, was Rohan's apology satisfactory in your view? I think it was big of him to do so publicly. Rogan. I'm like, who's Rohan? Was Rogan's apology satisfactory in your view? I think it was big of him to do so publicly, but he didn't mention casting blame on the left or Antifa, which was the worst part of what he said. That's what he was apologizing for, though. Like, that's what the controversy was over. Because he claimed left-wing activists were starting fires in Oregon. They were not. And he came out and apologized for spreading that misinformation. His apology was fine. It was fine. And, like, it's important to recognize how few people apologize. When you're on a platform like that, he has $100 million. He has a Spotify deal. He doesn't need to say shit. But he came out and apologized because I think he actually does care when he screws up. So he doesn't care often enough because there are other times that he screws up, but at the same time, he has moments where he pushes back on Ben Shapiro. I think I covered that. That was a great moment. He stopped having Dave Rubin on. There's progress. So he's somebody where it's important that I think I cover the bad and the good, and that's what I do on this show. I've given Rogan credit when he's done good stuff, like not inviting Ruben back on the show, and I've chastised him when he's said bullshit, like saying that left-wingers are starting fires. So that's my approach. Look at the bad and the good, and people can take their own or have their own thoughts on the man. Jeff says your point about dumping this crisis on a neoliberal administration just opened my eyes. I hadn't thought of it that way before. There you go. Hopefully that also opened others' eyes as well. Yeah, I wouldn't be saying vote for Biden if I thought it was bad strategy for the left. If I thought the left would be better with 4 more years of Trump, then I wouldn't be fighting for Joe Biden. But strategically, I think it's obvious that Trump has lowered the bar to the point that Biden's become an acceptable Democratic nominee. That you have the opportunity now to dump a crisis, an economic and pandemic, on a Democratic administration and show everybody why a neoliberal status quo is not enough. And you have people in Congress fighting for the actual progress, the actual left, fighting to do some real good. So this is we have the perfect storm to be able to push for some actual progress, at least in the conversation. But Trump has hampered that ability. You have people like AOC in there, but what can she do? What can AOC and Tlaib and Omar, what can they do when the Senate's held by the GOP? White House is Trump, obviously. Their hands are tied. But if Democrats hold every lever of power, the calculus changes. So, yeah. I mean, for me, it's all about strategy. It's not I hope it's clear I don't like Biden. I think if you look up my channel, look up Joe Biden on my channel, countless videos of me shitting on Joe Biden. But strategically, for the left, for us to progress as a society, I think it's obvious that you have to get Trump out. YT Party Tonight says, hire me, Dave. I want to move back to Ontario, Canada. The U.S. is killing me slowly. Please. Not too proud to beg here. Why did you leave? Oh, man. You made the wrong choice. It's fun. There was a point in my life where I wanted to live in the U.S. Maybe one day I still would. Maybe in like retirement if things dramatically change by then. Not that I would ever retire. I think I'd probably do this forever. But yeah, if you moved anytime recently, the wrong time to do so. Makia, and sorry, to answer your question, I already have somebody in mind that's really close to me that likely would help me out. But the thing with me, I can't even have interns because I want to be able to pay somebody properly if they're going to work for me, and I'm not really in that position yet. That's why I say support the show. Here, rationalnational.com/join Patreon page. These super chats help because I want to be able to give you more content. I want to hire more people. I want to be able to really cover the stuff in a way where I'm more comprehensive and can really dig deep into a lot of these stories. That me being a one-man band here, I'm doing editing, I'm doing the shooting, I'm the lighting, everything's me. It just limits my ability. So if I have more help, the ability to hire people, then I would do that. But I can't. I don't feel right hiring somebody if I can't pay them properly. So until then, I will be a one-man band. Makil Lapierre says, have you ever tried a browser extension such as uBlock to get rid of ads? Yes, but websites now, so this is in referencing what I said earlier. I'm having a lot of ads pop up when I not on Twitter, but on regular sites. But most websites now, and by the way, when you're watching my YouTube channel, please turn off those ad blocks because ads are part of the way I help support this, or that you help support this show. But I stopped using them for websites because websites don't allow you now, many of them, to actually access the content until you get rid of ad blocker. So it kind of hurts my ability to be able to present some information on this channel properly without a giant add-on screen. But that's the way it is. And yeah, at this point as well, like if it's a site I like and I think they do good work, I will give them money, and those ads will go away. But my issue is with like New York Times, the Washington Post. I'm not going to give them any money, but I can't access most of their content because it's behind a paywall or it's ad blocked. So that becomes an issue at times. Okay. I could do more stories. I could. Or I could just talk to you. What's up with the big super chat? Thank you so much for the super sticker. Very big. Thank you. Thank you so much. A lot of support today, really. Honestly, I appreciate it a lot. This is what keeps the show going, is your help. So thank you so much. Let me give you, since you've all been so kind to me today, I'm not really prepped for any of these stories that I'm about to, or a story here that I'm about to discuss, and my voice is going right now, as you can hear. But I will try. I will try, if I could speak, to get through maybe one more story here. I'm trying to think what I should do. Okay. All right. You know what? I never talk about this guy, but let's do it. You will see what I'm talking about in a minute here. So there's a guy on YouTube that you may have heard of because he has a friggin' massive audience. It's unexplainable, but he has a massive audience. That man is Tim Pool. Now, before I even get into this here, someone else on YouTube has done a fantastic job breaking down a lot of Tim Pool's bullshit. That is Vaush, Vaush, I believe. Look up his channel. He does some great videos on Tim Pool. But I saw this, and I want to quickly go through this because this is a man who is sort of a more successful version of Dave Rubin, meaning he is somebody who pretends to be of the left, a former Democratic Party supporter, who all he does is prop up Donald Trump. That's all Tim Pool does. Now, this account, Tim Pool Clips, did quite a bit of research into how Tim Pool does this. They say here, over the past 2 months, we've watched over 330 Tim Pool videos, God help you, and collected a list of every source he used and his political bias. Here is what we found. Let's get started here. So according to our analysis of over 330 videos, Tim Pool uses pro-right-wing biased sources almost 60% of the time, with his most commonly used source being the Daily Mail, a source so unreliable and controversial that Wikipedia doesn't allow its use as a reference in articles. So here's a quick pie chart here. Right-wing sources, 59%. Now, they say left here, but hold it. Because what they consider left, I would not consider to be on the left. But they say here, left-wing sources, 31%, and 10% is least biased. Additionally, across the 330-plus videos analyzed, Tim Pool's top 10 sources include 6 that have a pro-right-wing bias, including Breitbart, a source judged to be extreme right by the independent service we use to determine source bias. Now, this gives you a little window. If I can go small here so you can see this in a bigger screen. Check this out. So we got here, so right wing is in red, obviously. Daily Mail, Fox News, New York Times, left. They consider New York Times to be a left-wing source. Now you could say maybe culturally, maybe pro-choice, does not agree with white nationalists. So maybe in that sense, left bias. But in terms of economic policy, and in terms of, say, the Democratic primary, not a left-wing bias. Anyone that followed that primary at all understands. New York Times, Washington Post, mainstream media, CNN, another one here. Here's Washington Post, Newsweek. Newsweek's kind of back and forth. But Washington Post, New York Times, CNN, not big fans of Bernie Sanders. Not big fans of the working class. There is the occasional story that is an investigative piece that dives into aspects, say the eviction crisis and stuff like that. But when it comes to political analysis, not at all left-wing bias. But that's what apparently Tim Pool has used here, and is considered to be left-wing. But here you have Andy No, right-wing provocateur here, Andy No, as one of the major sources for Tim Pool. New York Post, the Oregonian, Breitbart, so other sources here. But again, this is somebody who pretends to be, I'm a disillusioned Democratic Party supporter. The left's gone crazy. The left's gone crazy. Let me now only source right-wing sources while discussing how crazy the left are. Like this, and it is an amazing grift. It is an amazing grift. Tim Pool, every single one of his videos, it hitting 1 million or almost 1 million. It is crazy. Absolutely crazy the amount of views that man gets. There is so much money to be made on YouTube if you are a right-wing grifter. And Tim Pool is the perfect example of that. Going on here, across 330 plus videos analyzed, Tim Pool's 5 most used sources are from most used to least: Daily Mail, Fox News, New York Times. Andy No tweets. This still cracks me up. New York Post. I think one more tweet here. When Tim Pool does include sources with a pro-left bias, New York Times, Washington Post, CNN, apparently, he often does so to criticize them for perceived failings or bias, rarely if ever doing the same with right and extreme right biased sources. Please do not fall for the Tim Pool right-wing grift. Despite his claims of being center-left, Tim Pool did not use a single source from an extreme left publication in the 330 plus videos analyzed. However, 5% of his sources have an extreme right-wing bias, including Breitbart, which is his joint 6th most used source. So in case you're wondering what actual left, like, there are conservatives that are so in their own ecosystem that they don't realize that we don't consider New York Times, CNN, MSNBC to be left-wing. Like, that's how sheltered those people, some of this audience is. An actual left-wing source, Jacobin, The Nation, New Republic. So they exist, but not Tim Pool's go-to, even though he's center-left, apparently. So just a little warning out there, you know, my audience, my usual audience is fully aware of grifters like this. But if you're out there and you see a Tim Pool video and, hey, this guy is from the left and he says the left's going crazy, recognize this guy is doing what he does to make a shit ton of money, lying to people as a right-wing grift. Okie dokie. There you go. Your extra story that I really did not prep at all, but I think I did all right there. Let me grab all the super chats, get them in now. There's like a minute delay. And then I'll have to get out of here. Vicky Klee, very generous super chat, says, here you go, David. I'll keep the ad block and support this way. All right. I mean, that's good too. If you keep the ad block on and send me a super chat, a generous super chat, I guess that's fine. Roxanne Margaret says, isn't 4 more years of Trump better than 8 years of Biden? No, because apart from how I already explained how dumping this crisis on a Democratic administration will help the left, Trump is already trying to undermine this election. Don't assume there's going to be a normal election in 4 years if Trump wins this one. And I know that may sound alarmist, but please go back in history. Look at the rise of Hitler. Look at what happened. He was treated as a joke. People didn't take him seriously until it was too late. You have to cut off the tumor now before it's cancer. Cut it off now. I mean, it already is cancer, but cut it off now before it gets to the lungs. Like, you have to get rid of this administration now. Because you don't want to see what the future holds if Trump's still in power. Ali Reza says, have you followed U.S. policy on Iran recently? Yeah. I'm not sure what you're referring to specifically. But yes, I have. Radzoso says, MediaBiasFactCheck.com is a good website for checking sources for bias and accuracy. MediaBiasFactCheck.com. All right. The thing with... I'm sure it's a fine source. I haven't checked it, so I can't. I don't know. But you also have to be able to just use your own judgment. Like, that's why it's important to be reading different sources and be able to form some media awareness, some foundation to build off of. Because if you're just relying on websites, then it could blind you to reality as well. Like, it's possible someone else takes over that site and then changes their entire framework and you don't even realize it. So, like, it's important to have just a bedrock of knowledge and work upon that. Don't just rely on even me, for example. I think you should trust what I say, but I think it's important to also get different sources, listen to different people, get different opinions. You really have to be engaged in, I mean, if you're watching me, then you're likely pretty engaged, but it's important to have different sources. And that also includes seeing what the right wing is saying, seeing what conservatives are saying, just to understand where they're getting their, or what their angle is, what their new grift is, or whatever. All right. Did I hear more? More chats come in? I may have. Let me do one last refresh here. Hopefully they're all in. My voice is definitely going. Jericho Anderson says, found your channel recently. I watch Mike, Kyle, and other progressive channels frequently. Glad I found you as well. Keep up the good work. Thank you, Jericho. Thank you. Those are all great people as well. I love Mike. I love Kyle. Great people. Glad you found me. Junior McGrath says Andy No is such a reliable source. He docks numbers from his critics. Such integrity. Yeah, he is not a good person. Okay. I think I have lost my voice officially. I think that's it. All right. Thank you all so much. I always enjoy the end of these streams, people that are still here. Deborah Hennessy says, thanks again, David, from Toronto. How many Toronto viewers are in here? You never know. We could walk by each other one day. Oh, someone came in late with a super chat. Let me grab you. I feel bad. Occasionally, I'll end a stream and somebody sent a chat in, but it's too late. But I got you in time. Roxanne Margaret says, about my last question, does Trump have constitutional power to stop/delay the election? By the way, I'm a fan. Yeah, absolutely. But he doesn't need. This presidency has been lawless in so many ways. Bill Barr will find whatever little legal jargon he can to be able to twist the results in a way that hands Trump an election. Now, but obviously there are limitations. Like if the in-person voting, if that is overwhelmingly for Biden, there's not much they can really do there. But with mail-in ballots, they can use the media to their advantage, claim victory early when they have not been victorious, when mail-in ballots are still being counted days later. Understand, on election day, we likely are not going to have the final result. We're going to have to wait a few days until mail-in ballots are all counted to understand who won. Think back in 2016. Hillary won the popular vote by over 3 million, but on election day, I think she only won it by 1 million. If that other 2 million were in counties and states where the election could have swung her way, then it may have been her victory. But on election day, it seemed like Trump won. This time, it's going to be even more extreme because of the coronavirus. A lot more people voting by mail. Many of them, most of them likely to be Democratic voters. So this is one election where forget what Trump says on election day. You have to sit back, wait a few days, and see until the real votes get counted. But that, again, if they're able to be counted, who knows what Bill Barr and Trump will try when it comes to stopping the count of the mail-in ballots. Like, that's what I'm most worried about, that they will do something in red states, most likely, to use their power to stop the count and to ensure that Trump keeps the states that he won in 2016 and he wins that way. Like, you have to be aware of what is possible. So this is why I would not risk anything right now. All right. I think I've said all right on this stream probably 100 times. But thank you so much. Gregor in the chat, the normie chat, says, "Hey Dave, great show. Do you know how many viewers of yours are centrist/conservative or libertarian?" I have no idea. I have no idea. We don't. There's no way to know that information. But I have seen people say that, hey, I used to be a liberal, or I used to be conservative, and now you've shown me a different way or whatever. I'm part of that conversation occasionally. So I hope that if somebody watching me is conservative, that they have changed their outlook, hopefully, through some of these videos. Or liberal, like MSNBC liberal, latte liberal. Hopefully I have changed some of those minds as well. But it's impossible to quantify that stuff. All right. Smash that like button, as Andrew L. says in the chat. Smash that like button. Subscribe. Hit the bell icon. And thank you so much for being here. We will get through this together. It's going to be a wacky month and a half and longer, but we'll get through it together. All right. See you all later. Have a great weekend. I may be on Twitch tomorrow, possibly. Follow me on there. See you later. Goodbye.